In 2018, during a major Magic the Gathering tournament, pro player Gabriel Nassif attacked, thinking his creatures were unblocked. His opponent double-blocked using a From the Vault Realms printing of Dryad Arbor, which Nassif had mistaken for a basic forest. Nassif lost his creature, setting off a major community debate about sportsmanship and deceptive card art that went on and on and on. Chris Pikula, a famed and celebrated pro player, led a massive anti-cheating movement that, among many other reforms to the pro scene, was centered around holding cheaters accountable. Despite this, Pikula fell short of being inducted into the inaugural Magic Hall of Fame by just one vote, which sparked its own debate made all the more endless when Magic's head of design, Mark Rosewater, not only voted for well-known cheater Mike Long to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but even went so far as to advocate for Long's inclusion, knowing full well his long history of cheating. In April of 2020, as the world grappled with the effects of COVID, Wizards of the Coast was forced to issue an apology for releasing the then promotional card Space Godzilla Death Corona. And on. Controversy. A winning player says good game to their opponent, and drama erupts. Discourse. Wizards of the Coast sends the Pinkertons to a Magic YouTuber's house because he opened product early in his video. Hogak. Does playing with mismatched lands give players an unfair competitive edge? Debate. The reprinting of cards in Chronicles leads to the creation of the reserve list. Oko. That guy who took all the photos of people's butt cracks at a Magic event. Fantastic. Oh wait, we did that one. It goes without saying that there have been some stupid controversies and dumb dramas in Magic the Gathering. With an over 30-year history as a competitive hobby, it's honestly inevitable. But even among this impressive pantheon, there are a few incidents that stick out in people's memories as, gosh, wasn't that a stupid thing to argue about? Today, I want to look at some of the most pointless, the most asinine, and the absolute dumbest dramas that have happened in Magic over the years. In other words, Tolarian wins videos I wish I had made. Rimshot. Ha ha ha. Joking aside, this is meant to be a fun look at the sort of controversies in Magic that, hopefully, most people can agree were silly and humorously blown out of proportion the way we Magic the Gathering players love to do. As such, I will not be covering any controversies that might in any way be mocking, shaming, or otherwise targeting individuals, which is why we're not doing the butt crack guy. Sorry. Also, I'm of course not getting into any controversies that were actually serious, nor any controversy that resulted in harassment, hate speech, death threats, etc., etc. This is meant as a fun journey down memory lane of some silly, dumb dramas, so nothing that resulted in, actual Nazis showing up. Not this video. God, the fact that that can apply to multiple incidents over the years. Anyway, let's wash that taste out of our mouths with an ad. Today, I want to take a calm and rational look at a sophisticated product. What is G Fuel, you might ask? Well, G Fuel is a sugar-free performance energy drink designed for the thinking individual. Available in over 50 flavors, it contains 0 sugar, 0 calories, and 0 carbs. And with G Fuel's caffeine formula, you're sure to get the energy you need without anything so illogical as jitters or a crash. Of course, there's nothing more intellectually sound than savings, so fear not. By using code TCC at gfuel.com, you'll get 20% off your purchase. Truly, it's the only logical choice. So please, be smart and try G Fuel today. On February 26, 2021, the official Play MTG account posted the following tweet. Why are Tron players the way that they are? Question. How do you think many Magic the Gathering players reacted to this lighthearted attempt at corporate "how do you do, fellow kids" humor? If your answer was accuse Wizards of the Coast of bullying Tron players and demand an apology, you're right. For those somehow unaware, by combining Urza's Mine, Tower, and Power Plant, Tron decks are able to generate 7 colorless mana as early as turn 3, which typically gives them an overwhelming mana advantage to leverage against their hapless opponent. Tron is one of the game's most storied archetypes, with a long history of dominating metagames across Standard, Legacy, Pauper, yes, the Urza lands are commons, and thus Pauper legal, and most famously, Modern. Tron decks have a reputation for being frustrating to play against, as Tron's payoffs also tend to be cards that aren't particularly fun to deal with, such as various versions of Karn and Ugin. This unfun perception, combined with the deck's pedigree of success, means Tron players have long been subjected to many jokes and memes poking fun at them, just as Control players, mono-red players, and many other types of players and decks get subjected to in a community. You think you know ridicule? Try playing Merfolk. Yo! Now, had a random member of the Magic community been the one to post this anti-Tron sentiment, absolutely no one would have batted an eye. It probably would have been upvoted or whatever. But this tweet came from the official Play MTG Twitter account, and thus Play Magic officially became Twitter's punching bag for the day, with many in the community accusing Wizards of bullying their player base. And yes, this escalated to the point that Play Magic ended up having to tweet an official apology rescinding the original post. We'd like to apologize for this tweet. What was intended as a playful exchange missed the mark. There is no wrong way to enjoy Magic. This tweet is not implicit approval to shame a fellow player for their choice of deck. Look, it's true that brands are not our friends, and they absolutely need to be held to a higher standard with regards to public communications, but this was such a harmless sentiment that it really feels like a stretch to portray it as actual, factual bullying. Granted, it's absolutely not a particularly funny tweet, and it does indeed reek of that "how do you do, fellow kids" humor, but the fact that some unfortunate social media manager was likely called into their boss's office and told to issue an official apology to Tron players qualifies this as one of Magic's stupider controversies. And besides, if your core game plan is to cast Karn Liberated on turn 3 and start exiling people's lands, why not fully embrace being the villain? It works for all those blue-white Control players. Hi everyone. In a recent video, I made an unfair comment about blue-white Control players being villains. This was wrong, and I accept full responsibility for my words. I can and will do better in the future. Our next controversy involves, of all things, otters. Otters have long been a fan-favorite creature type among Magic players, and this love goes back much further than the presence of otters in Magic altogether. In fact, it wasn't until 2020's Ikoria, ironically the set that gave us Death Corona on a card, that Magic would receive its first otter, despite years of fans clamoring for their inclusion in the game. Needless to say, animal lovers everywhere were excited to add an extra layer of cuteness to their decks. But Lutri, the Spell Chaser, wasn't just exciting because it was an otter. It also seemed like an absolutely broken card for Commander, and that is because it was. Lutri was one of Ikoria's 10 companions. Creatures who start the game in a separate zone, similar to the command zone, and can be cast from that zone on any turn of the game. Furthermore, each companion came with a deck building restriction, ranging from rather lenient to incredibly strict. Lutri's restriction simply requires players to play no more than one copy of each non-land card in their deck, which you may note is how Commander works already. And thus, this lack of any real restriction pushed Lutri over the line from exciting to egregious. Every single Izzet deck in the format, literally every one, could play Lutri with absolutely no trade-off whatsoever, thanks to the way Companion works. It wouldn't even cost you a slot in the main deck. Letting this subset of decks essentially play a second commander for free is an extreme and obvious balance issue, and one that absolutely could not be allowed to exist in the format. So what did Wizards of the Coast do? Well, they designed Lutri for starters, and somehow seemed oblivious to the most basic and defining rule of their most popular format. And what did they do next? Well, not much. For most of the format's history, Commander's banned and restricted list was managed by an external rules committee, completely unaffiliated with Wizards of the Coast and comprised entirely of volunteer players. For Wizards themselves to take action on Lutri would exceed their own authority and step on the rules committee's toes. Or perhaps more cynically, they just didn't want to deal with the inevitable blowback they knew messing with the already beloved Otter would cause. And thus they passed the buck, or Otter. And so the onus was on the rules committee to take action. And they did. Just 2 weeks prior to Ikoria's release, Sheldon Menery was forced to announce that yes, Lutri was being pre-banned from the format. Players were immediately up in arms. How? How could you ban Lutri from Commander? Have you seen the artwork? And it literally has the Commander words on it. But because it was the RC that had to make the decision, it was the RC who faced all the community outrage. As far as I'm concerned, if there's any real blame to be assigned here, it should fall squarely upon Wizards of the Coast for designing a card that would be so obviously broken in Commander, and then letting a group of volunteer players take the brunt of blame for its necessary banning. In fact, it wasn't just Lutri that was broken on arrival. The entire companion mechanic is infamously unbalanced. So much so that Wizards would eventually break their moratorium on functional errata and change the entire mechanic, now requiring an upfront payment of 3 mana to add your companion to your hand. And even this change wasn't enough. Multiple cards with companion have been banned across multiple formats, with Lurrus of the Dream Den being so broken that it was even temporarily banned in Vintage. Not restricted, banned. But even ignoring all of that, even if you want to grant them a bit of leeway on the mechanic itself, which I don't, but that's another video, it should have been incredibly obvious that a free roll companion is simply not something that should have been allowed to exist in the Commander format. It's too free to include for too many decks and creates obvious color imbalance issues in a format where those shouldn't really exist. Wizards of the Coast could have taken any number of steps to avoid this issue, changing the card, printing it as a regular legendary and not as a companion, or simply banning companions in Commander altogether, which a man can dream. A man can dream. But instead, they let the burden fall upon the Rules Committee, leaving them to take the fall for WotC's own mistake. What's especially frustrating about the endless upset that was caused by the pre-banning of Lutri was that when the card was recently given the special distinction of being banned as companion but legal as commander, it ended up not being an issue whatsoever. Just because Wizards of the Coast makes the best damn game in the world doesn't mean design confusion doesn't happen, but it should be them who are responsible for cleaning up their own mistakes and responding to public criticism, not a group of unpaid volunteers. What a dumb drama. All over an adorable otter. The Great Designer Search 3 was a design contest held in 2018 with the goal of finding the next member of Wizards R&D. Over 3,000 people participated in the rigorous multi-stage examination, but it was one of the earliest stages that ended up creating a firestorm of controversy. After the initial application round, which consisted of a series of short essay questions, there was a 75-question multiple-choice examination. Participants who answered at least 73 of the questions correctly would be admitted to the next stage. This is a harsh cutoff, and only 94 people wound up advancing. But it was this exam that would end up overshadowing the entire rest of the process thanks to a single baffling question. If you are unfamiliar with this controversy, try doing the question yourself right now. The question was as follows. We try to avoid making two-color cards where the card could be done as a monocolor card in only one of the two colors. Given that, suppose you have a two-color 4/4 creature with flying and vigilance and no other abilities. What of the following color combinations would be the best choice for this card? A. White-blue. B. White-black. C. Green-white. D. Blue-black. Or E. Black-green. One answer jumps off the page here, white-blue. At the time, there had already been multiple Azurius creatures with flying and vigilance, and it's certainly a combination of keywords that feels Azurius. So this question seems like a no-brainer, right? Well, wrong, because the intended answer was actually black-green. Here was Mark Rosewater's explanation as to why. Flying is primarily in white and blue and secondary in black. Vigilance is primary in white and secondary in green. As both abilities can be done in mono-white, we don't want to use white in this card. That means white-blue, white-black, and green-white are out. Blue-black can't use vigilance, meaning E, black-green, is the only possible answer. For the record, there's only ever been a single Golgari card with both flying and vigilance, and it was printed as a mystery booster playtest card. It actually seems to be a joke referencing this very controversy, meaning that really, to date, there's never been a Golgari card with flying and vigilance, and ultimately showing that this was probably not R&D's finest hour. It's no secret that Magic's rules enforcement has gotten more lax in recent years, especially in a competitive setting. Changes such as more lenient take-back rules and missing pact triggers have been hotly debated by those in competitive spaces, but there are reasonable arguments both for and against this loosening of the game's rules. But at least one of those changes, however, has inarguably been for the better, and it stems from one of the dumbest possible applications of how the rules used to be written. At the 2016 SCG Modern Open in Charlotte, Bradley Carpenter found himself facing down Bob Huang and his Goryo's Vengeance combo deck. Huang's primary goal was to cheat out massive threats using this namesake card, bringing the game to a swift conclusion with powerful creatures like Griselbrand and Borborygmos enraged. Carpenter, however, was ready for this strategy. His sideboard contained a full 4 copies of Pithing Needle to deal with the powerful activated abilities of both Griselbrand and Borborygmos enraged. Sure, he'll still be taking huge chunks of damage just from attacks, but without Griselbrand's ability to draw tons of cards, or Borborygmos' extra burn from discarding lands, he stands a much better chance of winning games even if a Goryo's Vengeance resolves. During the match, Carpenter plays a Needle and names Borborygmos. Huang then reanimates a Borborygmos enraged, smacks Carpenter in the face, and then activates Borborygmos' ability, killing Carpenter. So what gives? Well, the rules for naming cards have always been lenient enough to permit descriptions or shorthand of card names, rather than requiring the exact name. At the time, however, the responsibility for clarifying which card was intended fell upon the player naming the card, meaning that if there was any gray area whatsoever about what Carpenter named, Huang was under no obligation to ask him to elaborate. That being said, Carpenter just naming Borborygmos should have been clearly understood as Borborygmos enraged, given that he had just been killed by that card in the previous game. Unfortunately for Carpenter, Borborygmos happens to be the name of a completely different card, one that was also legal in Modern. Huang even stepped away from the table to confirm with the judge that this was a legal card to name, and since Huang wasn't obligated to make Carpenter clarify which version of Borborygmos he meant, he was well within his rights to interpret Carpenter as literally as possible. Thus, even though no reasonable player would ever choose the original version of Borborygmos in that spot, the rules of the time meant that Carpenter ended up naming the incorrect creature, and was subsequently killed by the very card he had tried to play around. Now, I'm certainly not going to argue that this wasn't the correct ruling, because it was. under the rules of the time. Carpenter had named a legal target with his pithing needle and thus was held to his choice. The fact that any reasonable observer could easily tell which card he meant to name simply was not a factor, but it's clearly a dumb rule, and there were far too many members of the community at the time who defended not just the ruling, but the rule itself. There's simply no reason for the rules of the game to be so clearly abusable. Luckily, the responsibility to clarify the intended card now falls upon the opponent rather than the player naming the card. It's just further proof that behind every rule is a story, and that some of these stories are exceptionally dumb. Now, so far today, we've talked about some really dumb dramas, but I'm not going to go so far as to say these are absolutely the top 5 dumb dramas in all of Magic, so much as just 5 of the dumbest dramas that have happened in Magic, with one exception, our number 1 pick, which I actually will go on record as stating that I think, out of all of Magic history, is the number 1 dumbest drama to ever erupt. The top spot, indeed. Back in 2015, prominent pro player Pascal Maynard was in the top 8 of Grand Prix Las Vegas. The format was Modern Masters 2015 Draft. Going into Pack 2, Pascal had the makings of a very nice Boros aggro deck, and it seemed like that would continue. The best card in the pack was Burst Lightning, one of the best commons in the set, and an excellent pickup for his deck. Normally, this would be a no-brainer pick. Unfortunately for Maynard, there was also a foil Tarmogoyf in the pack, and if you were playing 60-card Magic around this time, you probably already see Pascal's dilemma. In 2015, one of the most popular decks in Modern was Jund, a grindy mid-range deck combining sticky threats, hand disruption, and removal. Perhaps no card in the deck was scarier than Tarmogoyf, a 2-mana beater whose power and toughness increased for each card type in the graveyard. Typically, this meant you reliably had a 2-mana 4/5, and it was often even bigger than that. In the context of 2015 Magic, this was a terrifying threat, both efficient and powerful enough to dominate the Modern format. The reality was reflected in the card's price tag. From the moment it first began seeing play, Tarmogoyf became notoriously and ridiculously expensive, with its value easily surpassing triple digits. Originally printed in Future Sight, its reprinting in the first Modern Masters did little, if anything, to put a dent in this price tag, and it looked like Modern Masters 2015 would be much the same. At the time of GP Las Vegas, a Modern Masters 2015 Tarmogoyf would sell for around $160. And in an era where foils were much rarer than they are today, a foil Tarmogoyf could go for upwards of $430. Meanwhile, as of the recording of this video, if you were to go visit manapool.com/TCC if you're so inclined, you can actually buy Tarmogoyf for anywhere between $5 and $10. $10 if you'd like the original Future Sight version, or you could always save a few dollars and get whatever this is. And if you'd like to pick up your very own foil Tarmogoyf over at Manapool, you can do so for about $25. Or, just pick up the Dan deck that we have listed at manapool.com/TCC, either way. So picture this, you're drafting for a chance at hundreds of dollars and potential Pro Tour implications. Your pack contains a common that's perfect for your deck, but it also contains a check for $430. Which would you take in that situation? Maynard took the Tarmogoyf, and the internet subsequently exploded. It seemed like everyone on the planet had an opinion on Pascal's decision and what it meant for the ethics of the game. There were angry tweets, Reddit posts, think pieces, the whole 9 yards. It didn't help that Pascal would go on to be eliminated in top 4 by Lucas Deschaux, who was playing the very Burst Lightning Maynard passed. Frankly, all of this is ridiculous. Even in its heyday, professional Magic has never been lucrative, and prize support at major tournaments has always been a point of contention between Wizards of the Coast and the pro player community. A $400 Tarmogoyf for Maynard basically represented free entry into the next Grand Prix. If he thought he could still do well in his top 8 without the Burst Lightning, he'd have been a fool to make any other decision. It was incredibly obvious how many of the angry Twitter users trying to play Monday morning quarterback had never been in a similar situation themselves. But honestly, the fact that $400 was such a big difference maker to one of Magic the Gathering's best pro players showed just how little compensation pro players were getting. It honestly is ridiculous on a whole other level, but I don't even want to get into it on that. Maynard, for his part, ended up auctioning off the Tarmogoyf for almost $15,000, with half the proceeds being donated to the charity Gamers Helping Gamers. It's always nice when these things have a happy ending. And now we come to you. Do you have a strong opinion on anything we talked about today? Are there any dumb dramas that, do not involve in any way hate or harassment or threats or targeting or mocking of individuals? None of that stuff, just purely stupid controversies that you feel we left out. Let me know in the comments below. None of those, by the way, none of those. We don't want to talk about those. But if you do want to talk about other issues in Magic the Gathering, less stupid ones, you can watch our video in which we talk about why Commander damage should absolutely not be removed from the game of Commander, or where we just go over the history of Umezawa's Jite in Magic the Gathering. It's a really interesting kind of video essay about the card, and I think we present a really great argument here. You can check those videos out, of course, linked in this video's description, or just by, there's like an eye, there's supposed to be an eye that's appearing. You click on that, you see some of the old videos, so you'll be helping the channel out when you do.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play, I can't wait to see what happens.
We Hearthstone now because I've invited not one, but two famous Hearthstone streamers here today.
I'm gonna kick you in the shin.
Because I like you guys all so much, I'm gonna play Esper Sentinel. You want me to read it?
Are you
Urza.
kidding me?
Great. I'm gonna go ahead
and pay the one?
TGB, it's turn one. Can you
Tezzeret.
relax?
Tap for 3 to play Phyraxian Unlife.
It's a miracle! Improvisation capstone.
Just let me know when I can kill you.
And that kid is called gentle parenting. I hit you once.
Listen, hit me again.
Relax, okay?
Hit me again.
You can't just ask that, okay? That could cost money.